When you look at the house next door, what do you usually see? A perfectly mowed lawn? A quiet porch? Maybe a place where a nice grandpa drinks tea and watches the Weather Channel? That is exactly what I saw too. For the last 5 years, I have lived next door to a man named John. He is 84 years old. He waves at me every single morning. He has never played loud music, and his biggest complaint in life is that the squirrels keep stealing his birdseed. To me, he was just the perfect, boring neighbor. But I was wrong. I was so wrong that it actually scares me a little bit. Last month, a simple act of helping him with his groceries turned into the discovery of a lifetime. Inside this quiet, boring house, hidden in a stack of dusty notebooks, I found secrets that date back to the 1960s. It turns out, my neighbor wasn't just a retiree. He was a human computer for the U.S. government during the height of the Cold War. He spent his life hunting Soviet frequencies, cracking impossible codes, and protecting secrets that could have literally ended the world. And the craziest part? He has agreed to teach me how he did it. Let me take you back to last Tuesday. It was a completely normal afternoon. I was coming home from the gym, and I saw John pulling into his driveway. Since he is 84, he moves a bit slowly, and I noticed he was really struggling with 4 heavy bags of groceries. Naturally, I ran over to help. I grabbed the bags, and we walked inside. Now, I had never actually been inside his house before. I expected it to look normal. You know, photos of grandkids on the wall, maybe a TV playing the news, the smell of old furniture. But when I walked into his dining room to set the bags down, I froze. The table was covered in paper. Not newspapers, not mail. It was covered in stacks of old, yellowed spiral notebooks. And they were all open. I looked closer, and my brain couldn't make sense of it. There were no words, just grids. Rows and rows of numbers. 45, 90, 11. Triangles, circles, X's. It looked like the chalkboard from a movie about a mad scientist. I laughed nervously. You know that awkward laugh you do when you are confused? And I said, "Whoa, John, you planning a bank heist or something?" He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He took off his glasses, wiped them slowly with his shirt, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "No, I used to do this for a living." We sat down for coffee, and for the next 2 hours, my entire reality shattered. John wasn't an accountant or a librarian like I'd assumed for years. In 1961, he was recruited straight out of college because he had a gift for pattern recognition. He explained something to me that I never really thought about. Computers didn't really exist yet. Well, they did, but they were the size of a room and slower than a calculator watch. So, who encrypted the messages? Who decoded the Soviet signals? People like John. He told me about his nights working in a windowless room, listening to what they called ghost stations or number stations. Have you guys ever heard of UVB76? The buzzer? These are radio frequencies that just broadcast static for hours, and then suddenly, a voice reads a string of numbers. John's job was to listen to that static for 12 hours straight. He told me it was boring, until it wasn't, because if you missed one number, a submarine somewhere might not get its orders. Or we might miss a warning about a missile launch. Think about that pressure. I get stressed when my Wi-Fi is slow. This guy had the weight of nuclear winter on his shoulders, armed with nothing but a number 2 pencil and a notebook. After hearing his stories, I couldn't just leave. I was hooked. I asked him, "Can you teach me? Can you show me how it works?" He hesitated at first. He is a man who spent 40 years keeping secrets. Sharing them doesn't come naturally. But eventually, he smiled and said, "Come back on Thursday." So, welcome to spy school. The first thing he taught me is that Hollywood is wrong. Real spies don't use complicated lasers or gadgets. They use math. He introduced me to something called the Vigenère Cipher. Most of you probably know the Caesar shift, right? where A becomes B and B becomes C. That is way too easy to break. In the Vigenère Cipher, you use a keyword. Let's say I want to send a message, hello, and my secret keyword is spy. I have to shift the first letter H by the letter S, then shift E by the letter P. It creates a jumbled mess of letters that looks like nonsense to anyone who doesn't have the key. And John ... He can do this in his head. Watching an 84-year-old man do complex modular arithmetic faster than I can type it into my phone was honestly humbling. He told me, computers made you lazy. You stopped looking for patterns because the machine does it for you. But there was one question that was still bothering me. The Cold War is over. The Berlin Wall fell decades ago. So why is his dining table still covered in notebooks? Why is he still decoding messages every day? I finally asked him. He looked out the window at his bird feeder, and he said something I will never forget. He said, "It keeps the mind quiet. It's a puzzle that never ends." And honestly, ... I miss the clarity. In a world full of noise, numbers make sense. I realized that for John, this isn't work. It's who he is. It made me realize how little we know about the people around us. We walk past elderly people in the park, at the grocery store, or living right next door. We just see old people, but we forget that they lived entire lives before we were even born. They were heroes. They were villains. They were spies. And all we have to do is ask. I have learned more in 4 Thursdays with John than I did in 4 years of university. And now I have a challenge for you. John actually wrote a message for the subscribers of this channel. I'm putting the code on the screen right now. It is a simple Caesar cipher with a shift of -3. If you can crack the code, comment the answer down below. I will be pinning the first person to get it right. And here's the deal. If this video gets 50,000 likes, John has agreed to let me film HIM explaining the one-time pad, the only code in history that is mathematically impossible to break. So smash that like button if you want to meet the real spy next door. Don't forget to subscribe. Check on your neighbors, and I will see you in the next one.